Hello and welcome back to this day in history. It is August 2nd, 2024, and as you know, uh, it's not about the year, it's about the date. Side note, I forgot, and I don't know how I forgot because I told myself I was going to, gotta remember this, yesterday for August 1st. It was the birthday of Def Leppard frontman Joe Elliott. And Def Leppard is my favorite band of all time, and how I could have ever possibly forgot to wish the frontman of my favorite band a happy birthday. Uh, my my fan card should be revoked. Joe, I'm so sorry. I hope you had an excellent birthday yesterday. Keep rocking, dude. Yeah. Love you guys. So it's August 2nd, and we only have like one page of notes. I mean, there wasn't a whole lot that happened on August 2nd, but there's some good stuff here. So let's get into it, shall we? So the very first birthday, it's all 20th century. And for the most part, no. Every one of these birthdays, they're all in the arts and entertainment field of some fashion or another. And all but one and a half. I'll get to that in a second. They're all American. The one and a half is Chilean American. So, let's just get to it. 1924, James Baldwin. James Baldwin is an American author. 1932, Peter O'Toole, Irish actor, and he was in movies such as like Lawrence of Arabia, great movie, although I kind of fell asleep there toward the end, but it was late when I was watching it. But Peter O'Toole he's been in a lot of comedies. He did a lot of just a lot of like really good roles in the 60s and beyond. The movie Troy with Eric Bana and Orlando Bloom and Brad Pitt, Brian Cox. Who else? I mean, it was a star-studded cast. He was in that movie as well. He was the Trojan king, and the father of Hector and Paris in that movie. Great movie. Peter O'Toole I loved his work. He was an awesome actor. 1939. See, I didn't realize he was this old, or that he was born that early, I suppose. 1939, Wes Craven, American director and screenwriter. Now, Wes Craven, if you don't know the name, you probably know his movies. He is the guy who did the Nightmare on Elm Street series. And it's said that every time he had a nightmare, that was the impetus of each new film that he did. That he drew his inspiration. His screenwriting was drawn on the inspiration of nightmares that he would have. 1942. Here's that half. Isabel Allende is a Chilean-American author. 1964, on this day, 1964, Mary Louise Parker was born. She was an American actress, and she was in the TV series Weeds. She was in the R.I.P.D. movies, or at least the first one anyway. She has been in a lot of stuff, and she still looks good as far as I'm concerned. I mean, what a beautiful woman. So, happy birthday, Mary Louise Parker. So we go back into most of everything that had happened on this day, historically speaking, is all, 19th and 20th century stuff. I mean, it's, and a couple things that happened, and one thing that happened in our century now. But So the very first thing right off the bat is 1830. We talked about this in a previous video. 1830, Charles X of France, he abdicates his throne. He's unable to resist. He's unable to resist the July Revolution. And what happened there was that Philippe was installed as king because Charles had abdicated. I think he preferred living rather than being dead. And the July Revolution was really it was a pivotal point in their history where the upper middle class moved up socially. They were also known as the bourgeoisies, and so the bourgeoisies had upped their game and their status in high society, and they were basically a main political force. Funny enough, the bourgeoisie movement would have a huge impact on Russian affairs during their own revolution. It was bourgeoisie mindset that brought the peasantry of Russia, up into they upped themselves into upper middle class. The bourgeoisies they spurred revolution, calling themselves Bolsheviks, and then they had the Bolshevik Revolution. Tsar Nicholas II was already ousted, but then they took it a step further and murdered the family so that the whole dynasty was flat out killed out, and then they proceeded to create the communist Soviet regime that they had that lasted for 80 plus years. Anyway, I'm digressing, but I think a lot of that comes from stuff like what happened in 1830, and then of course Karl Marx establishing his lazy theories, and he was a lazy SOB. I mean, like, how he got paid was that he would just sue people, and somehow he would convince judges that he was in the right, and so he got his payday by suing people. And then along the way he professed how everything should be state provided and that everyone needs to be basically suck on the government tit. I mean, really, that's all Marxism and communism is. It's about being totally reliant on the state government, or the state, your government, to provide everything for you. But there's a cost to that. Your freedom is the cost of that, right? You don't have the freedom to think. You don't have the freedom to do. You are a serf at that point, and you do whatever the government tells you to do. Ask any former Soviet, and they'll tell you that that's how life was in the Soviet Union. And you only had a good life if you were higher up on the echelons there. If you were upper crust, you were upper society, you were staunch card-carrying members of the party, you had more opportunities. If you were a peasant, you were nothing. You were a serf, and that you lived in a life of poverty. And any one of you out there that thinks that communism or socialism or Marxism, any of that stuff is better than the system that we have. Granted, it's an imperfect system, but it's the best system out there in the world. Go to those countries. By all means, I'll help you pack. Go to those countries and live there without the executive privileges you have of being an American. That's the caveat. Go and truly immerse yourself into those societies and be one of them. And it's really easy for Americans to go abroad and say, oh, this system's so much better. I knew a woman once that she lived in France for some time, and she had some medical issues, and everything was all paid free. And I'm like, well, yeah, it was paid free because the government taxes its people upwards to 40 to 50% to pay for that free healthcare system. And you basically let the French taxpayers pay for your medical issue, and you got off scot-free. And then you got to come home and say, hey, France was so great. We should be more like France. The problem is, like, you used and abused their resources, and you left them paying the tab. So, I mean, how was that right? That's not right at all. But you want to truly immerse yourself into that culture, go. Stop being an American. Go be a French woman and, live life over there under their system. And you're going to find that, that great job that you think you have, that income is taxed 40 to 50% or whatever it is over there. I've heard that, like, in one of the Scandinavian countries, that corporate tax is like up to 40 to 60%, something like that. It's huge. It's very unbalanced and very unfair. And so it's like, why do you never hear of Scandinavian corporations? You don't. They import because they can't afford to export. But I'm off on a tangent. I'm sorry. Fast forward to 1876. Wild Bill Hickok. This is the day. It's on this day in 1876 that Wild Bill Hickok was slain. He was a frontiersman. He was a marksman. He was a gambler. And in fact, it was in a gambling game where he got killed. He was actually shot in the back of the head. He had his back turned to the door, which is uncharacteristic of him. He usually always, sat, when he sat at a table, he always sat with his back to the wall so that he could see the front door. And it just happened to be at this game, the only seat that was available for the gambling poker game, I think it was. Yeah, it was poker, because it was the aces and eights is what he had. It's known as the dead man's hand because that was the hand that he was holding when he was killed. But all the other chairs were taken, and so he had to take this chair where his back was to the door, and the guy that killed him snuck up behind him and just shot him in the head. Shot him dead. 1920, Marcus Garvey is a black leader and founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association. It's on this day that he reaches the height of his power as he presided over an international convention in New York City. On this day in 1943, my kinsman again, the PT-109, which is a patrol torpedo boat the U.S. Navy had. They were diesel-run ships that they carried torpedoes that basically they were used in World War II to patrol areas and try to take out smaller vessels like destroyers and submarines with the torpedoes that they had. At any rate, they were out on patrol that night. The PT-109 was commanded by John F. Kennedy, my kinsman. And the story is that they were out at night and everyone was asleep. And the guy that was supposed to have been on watch duty, he'd fallen asleep. And they were there in the middle of the ocean in a Japanese destroyer. So they're sitting right here. And a Japanese destroyer just comes and hits them and breaks it in half, and the PT-109 sinks. I think it had like a crew of 11 or 13 people. I know that 2 people were killed, and like 4 or 5 people were severely wounded. To his credit, Kennedy had rallied all his men up, and they swam to a local island, only to find that the island didn't have potable water. So he went and swam miles to another island, and luckily he wasn't in shark-infested waters, but he found this other island that did have potable water. He swims back to the original island that he came from, gathers his men, and then they make the swim to that other island where they were eventually rescued, retrieved, and he got I believe he won, I want to say he won the Medal of Honor for that act. At very best, he should have got at least the Navy Cross for it. So, but yeah, it's on this day, August 2nd, 1943, that the PT-109 is struck and sunk by a Japanese destroyer. In 1992, we're talking the Summer Olympic Games in Barcelona. American athlete Jackie Joyner Kersey. She is considered to be the greatest of all time, the greatest athlete of all time. She won a heptathlon, becoming the first person to win the event in consecutive games. And if you don't know what a heptathlon is, I had to look it up. It's like they're like track and field games. There was like the javelin throw, the discus throw, I think the long jump, and a couple of races as well. And that she won gold in that. 1997, an American writer by the name of William S. Burroughs. He dies at the age of 83. He was well known for his writing, which was very heavily sexually themed. He was. I'm not really familiar with his work, but he died at the age of 83. 2016. Chemist Ahmed H. Zewail. He died at the age of 70. But a side note on him is that in 1999, he became the first Egyptian, first Arab to win the Nobel Prize in a science category, and that category being chemistry. So he was a Nobel Prize winner, and he died at the age of 70 in 2016. And our featured event is Kuwait is invaded by Iraq. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait because he wants to take over their oil fields, and he just wants to expand. I mean, he had his own oil fields. It's not like he really needed any more. But he was a megalomaniac and thought that it was his time to rule the Arabian Peninsula. So it's on this day he rolls into Kuwait, and he occupies Kuwait. And now Saudi Arabia is concerned because they think they're going to be next, and of course they would have been next had they not called out to the UN and asked for help. So many months had gone by trying to get Saddam to, leave Kuwait, and Saddam snubbed his nose at everybody. So it's August, and I remember this. I was going into my sophomore year in high school. So I remember the ramp up. I remember it being news of them invading Kuwait. And then it was actually January 16th, 12 a.m., midnight, East Coast time, that was the deadline. The deadline was given. Bush Sr. says, okay, here's the deal. We've got this coalition force gathered together. It's going to be war if you do not leave. Right now, here's your thing. You need to leave Kuwait. And the mandate was always just to remove Iraq from Kuwait. That's why we never went into Baghdad, and we never took them out even in 1991 when we probably should have. But that wasn't the mandate to get all those 30 nations signed on board to go be part of this coalition and go go push Saddam out of Iraq. So it's January 16th. The war starts because Saddam refused to leave. And in a matter of 6 weeks, it was about 6 weeks' time, the time that it took Germany to fully pacify Poland was about the time that it took for us as a 30-nation coalition to go completely remove Iraq from Kuwait. And the aftermath of that was that there was a no-fly zone in the southern part of Iraq, meaning they couldn't fly their planes, they couldn't put their tanks in there, and if they did, they were going to start an international incident, and then the allies that were there were going to go kick the crap out of them again. And so for the next 12 years, it would be, UN resolution after resolution after resolution sanctioning him for violations. He was supposed to, make some reparations. He was supposed to agree to having UN inspectors come in and check for, weapons of mass destruction, and he'd always interfere with that. And it wasn't until Bush Jr. you know, 12 years later, that would say, okay, enough is enough. And Bush Jr. went in with UN under the legalities of UN resolutions, 2 UN resolutions, and I can't remember which ones they were now. I used to cite them a lot. I want to say I can't remember, but there was 2 specific UN resolutions. That's why the UN never sanctioned the United States for going in there during Gulf War II and kicking the crap out of him, because the UN knew that us going in there we were legally right, because we were actually we were enforcing international law, or in international sanctions imposed on Iraq. So, as an entity, you can't impose a restriction and then get mad when someone actually enforces that restriction. So that's why, for all those people that say that it was an illegal war, well, no, it wasn't. We had the legal authority, the moral authority to enforce the recognized legal law in that respect. So, but at any rate, there's your little history on Iraq, the Iraq War, both of them actually, or touching a little bit on the second one. But yeah, it was on this day that he invades Kuwait, but it was on, it was in 91 that a war kicked off, and he'd get his butt stomped. I mean, so he invades and he refuses. It sparked the Gulf War, and like I said, a coalition forces of about 30 nations went in there and they mud stomped him and booted him out of Kuwait. So that is this day in history. And my back's not feeling so well, so I think I might call off work today. So arthritis sucks. So, at any rate, have a great day. Take care. I mean, it's a bright, beautiful, blessed Friday afternoon, blue skies. I mean, on one hand, I don't want to go to work because it's such a pretty day, but I legitimately am hurting. So I think I'm going to take the day off. I don't know. I'm on the fence because I had last Friday off due to a computer glitch. So, I mean, that's like 2 days, I don't know. I'm mumbling. I'm grumbling. I'm going to go. You guys have a blessed day and take care. We'll do this again tomorrow for August 3rd. All right? See ya.